So how does the Neuralink chip actually work? And no, it's not Elon Musk controlling everyone from his computer, turning us into an army of robots, all controlled by him, making him the supreme leader of the world. Or at least, I think. Anyway, how does it work? And I'm gonna explain this as simply as possible. Okay, so your brain is basically just an electrical storm happening inside your skull 24 hours a day. Every single thing you do, picking up a coffee cup, remembering your best friend's face, feeling nervous before a big presentation, all of that is just tiny electrical sparks jumping from one nerve cell to the next over and over, millions of times per second. That's it. Now here's where it gets interesting. What if you could tap into those sparks, actually intercept them, figure out what they mean, and hand that information to a computer? No touching, no typing, no talking, just thought. That's the whole idea behind Neuralink. Neuralink is Elon Musk's brain chip company, and what they built is a chip about the size of a coin that sits inside your skull. Its job is to listen to your brain and beam that information wirelessly to your phone or laptop. No wires poking out, no hardware strapped to your head, just a coin sitting under your skin, doing its thing. But how does a coin inside your skull actually hear your thoughts? That's the part we're slowing down on. Attached to the chip is a bunch of threads, incredibly thin ones, about 20 times thinner than a single human hair. So thin, you genuinely cannot see one with your bare eyes. Those threads get tucked into the part of your brain that handles movement. Along each thread there are tiny sensors called electrodes. And those electrodes just sit there picking up the electrical activity buzzing around them inside your brain tissue. The current version has over 1,000 of these sensors, and the reason that number matters is worth understanding. Imagine you're standing outside a packed concert hall and you're trying to figure out exactly what song is being played inside. If you've got one microphone pressed against the wall, you're getting a muffled mess. But if you could wire up 1,000 microphones throughout the building, suddenly you can pick out the guitar, the vocals, someone dropping a pick. That's exactly what more electrodes do. The more you have, the clearer your read on what's happening in there. So the chip is picking up signals. Now, what happens? The signals coming from your neurons are incredibly faint, so weak that normal electronics would barely register them. So the chip first amplifies everything, then converts it into digital data, ones and zeros a computer can work with. It crunches over 200 megabits of neural data every single second, then compresses all of that by over 200 times before sending it wirelessly, because otherwise the battery would be dead before lunch. Once that data lands on your phone or laptop, software takes over, and this is where it actually gets interesting. The software has one job: learn what your brain's patterns mean. When you think about moving your hand left, specific neurons fire in a specific sequence. Different direction, different sequence. The software learns those patterns over time and starts translating them into commands. The longer it runs, the better it gets at reading you specifically. Now let's talk about the guy who's actually living with this thing in his head, because his story is kinda wild, and it could help us understand it all way more clearly. His name is Nolan Arbaugh, and the way he even found out about Neuralink is that his buddy called him drunk at 11 in the morning on a Wednesday and said, "Hey, do you want a chip in your brain?" Nolan said, "Sure, why not?" His friend had been Googling SpaceX, stumbled onto the human trial sign-up, thought of Nolan immediately, and called him. They applied together over the phone, friend doing all the typing. Nolan had been paralyzed from the shoulders down since a swimming accident in 2016. He was 22 at the time, working at a summer camp. Before Neuralink, just sending a text message could take him anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. Getting online, playing a game, doing basically anything on a computer required special equipment and a ton of effort. He got the implant in January of 2024 at a hospital in Phoenix, and he got out of the hospital the next morning. Says it didn't hurt at all, never even needed Tylenol. And the first thing he did when he got home was stay up until 6 in the morning playing Civilization 6, controlling the whole game with nothing but his thoughts. He described moving the cursor for the first time as feeling like using the Force. Since then, he uses the chip about 10 hours a day. He's back in school, studying neuroscience, started his own business, and traveled to Paris. He jokes that he's technically a cyborg, and says that if he didn't remember having the surgery, he wouldn't know the chip was there at all. He can't feel it. Next, let's get into how it actually gets placed inside someone's skull, because the surgery itself is something. A human surgeon doesn't do the implant. A robot does one Neuralink build called the R1, which works like an incredibly precise sewing machine. It threads all those hair-thin wires through brain tissue one by one, weaving around blood vessels the whole time. Your brain is packed with tiny blood vessels, and nicking, even one would be a serious problem, so it needs more precision than any human hand can manage. The robot places hundreds of electrode threads in just a few minutes. After that, the chip sits in a small hole, cut in the skull, flush with the surface, and your skin heals back over it. From the outside, you can't tell anything is there. It charges wirelessly through your skin. It's the same idea as putting your phone on a charging pad. One thing that did go wrong early on, about a month after Nolan's surgery, around 85% of his electrode threads had retracted. They pulled back slightly from where they'd been placed and knocked out most of his working sensors, tanking his control. Neuralink shipped a software update that compensated and things recovered. Nolan said at the time he chose not to say anything publicly because he didn't want people to lose faith before the team had fixed it. Patients who came after him haven't had the same problem. So where does all of this go from here? Right now, Neuralink is focused entirely on paralysis. But the product they're working on next is called Blindsight, designed to give back some level of vision to people who are completely blind, not by fixing the eyes, but by sending visual signals directly into the part of the brain that processes sight. The FDA fast-tracked it in 2024, and trials are expected to start in 2026. Beyond that, there's the much further out stuff Musk talks about: AI integration, memory storage, humans and machines merging. Neuroscientists are pretty openly skeptical. Getting from where things stand today to any of that is such a colossal jump that nobody's mapped out how you'd do it, and most researchers think the timelines being floated are nowhere near grounded. So what do people actually think is coming? Because this is where it gets genuinely exciting. One of the biggest things Neuralink has already pulled off, beyond cursor control, is robotic arms. A patient named Rocky Stoutenberg, paralyzed since 2006, used a robotic arm connected to his Neuralink implant to reach out and kiss it, just with his thoughts. Another patient, Nick Ray, used a robotic arm to pick up a cup and drink from it on his own for the first time in years. And a patient named Alex set a world record for brain-computer interface cursor control, then used Neuralink to play rock, paper, scissors against his uncle by controlling a digital arm. Neuralink is now working with Tesla to build Alex an actual Optimus robotic hand he'll be able to control with the implant full-time. Musk has said he thinks Neuralink will eventually restore full body functionality to paralyzed patients, and the actual mechanism for that is called spinal cord bridging, where a second implant, lower in the body, intercepts the brain's movement signals and relays them past the point of injury, essentially rewiring around the damage. That would mean a paralyzed person could potentially walk again. Not through a robotic exoskeleton, not through someone helping them, just their own legs, responding to their own thoughts. Again, there are also some questions nobody's answered yet. Brain data is being processed and transmitted wirelessly, so who actually owns that data? What happens if it gets hacked? What does it mean for your privacy when your thought patterns are sitting on a server somewhere? And cost is a big one. Estimates put the procedure somewhere between $10,000 and $40,000, which means if this ever expands beyond medical use, the gap between who can access it and who can't would be enormous. What nobody's disputing though is that the technology works. Nolan Arbaugh went from spending years mostly lying in bed, taking 15 minutes just to send a single text, to using a chip inside his skull to study, run a business, travel to Paris, and play speed chess, all through thought alone. He's one of 12 people doing exactly that right now. That's where we are. The very beginning of something that could end up being one of the most significant technologies ever built, or it stays a life-changing tool for people with paralysis. Probably somewhere between the two. Either way, worth paying attention to. And yeah, that's how Neuralink works. Hopefully you enjoyed it and maybe learned something. If yes, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.